I'm Daniel. Thank you for coming to my channel. Today, I'm here to explain how British politics works for an American audience. I think a lot of us as Americans don't really hear that much about British politics. Maybe we hear about big things like Brexit or a new prime minister, but we don't really know how the gears actually work. So today, I'm going to explain that to you. Let's start off by recapping how the American system works. In the US, we have three branches of government: the legislative, Congress and the Senate; the executive, president and the federal agencies; and the judicial, which is the court system, which is independent. The federal and the legislative both have their own separate elections, and they can be held by separate parties. So, for instance, the Republicans might control the Senate, while the Democrats control the House and the presidency. The UK also has three branches of government, but they're divided a little differently. So, the court system is still independent, but the legislative and executive branches are mixed. The legislative branch is technically made up of the House of Commons and the House of Lords, but the executive branch is the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. So, in the British system, the House of Commons controls all the real power. They can make and repeal bills, they can set the budget, they can amend things. They are the center of legislative power in the British system. Now, one thing I should mention is that the House of Lords still does exist, but they're much less powerful. They're really more of an advisory body at this point, and members typically only show up if they feel that they have expertise that's relevant to the legislation being discussed. The House of Commons has 650 seats, so a party needs to win 326 seats in the election to get a majority. If a party does win a majority, that party's leader becomes the Prime Minister, and they get to choose among those party members who they want to be in their cabinet. Now, if no party wins a majority, which happens a lot more often in British politics than in American politics, what happens usually is that the largest party makes some sort of deal or an alliance with one of the smaller parties, and together they form what's called a coalition government, where the larger party usually gets to pick the prime minister, but some of the cabinet members will come from the smaller party, and they will compromise on the sort of deals and budget that they try and pass. One thing that's important to point out here for Americans is that in Britain, they use the word government to mean the party that is currently in the majority. It's kind of like how Americans say administration to mean the party that has the presidency. So the Obama administration was running at the same time as the David Cameron government. Now that we've seen how the UK and US government work, let's take a look at some of the differences. The first thing I want to point out about the British system is that it's more representative. In the UK, you only have one house that really matters, the House of Commons, and each seat is representative of an equal number of people. In the US, the Congress is representative, but the Senate not so much. Each state gets 2 senators, regardless of population. So small states like North Dakota get just as many senators as big states like California, and Americans living outside of a state get no representation at all. Britain doesn't have any sort of equivalent to this. In the British system, if you have 326 votes, you can pass a law. It doesn't matter if the Prime Minister is against it, if the House of Lords is against it, if the Queen is against it. If you have 326 votes, you can get your law passed. Now let's compare that to the American system. In the US, you have to have a majority in Congress, a supermajority in the Senate, the signature from the President, and potential review from the Supreme Court. This means that there's a lot more choke points where legislation can get killed off. I think the supermajority in the Senate is particularly noteworthy. Because of an institution called the filibuster, most controversial bills need 60 votes to pass in the Senate. This means that a party that has only 41 senators can block legislation no matter how popular it is. Now, if we combine this with the fact that the Senate is not really very representative, this means that if the 41 senators from the smallest population states all vote together, then only 15% of the US population can stop what 85% of the population might be in favor of. Now, people have been experimenting with democratic systems of government for thousands of years, and I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers. But I will say that after living in Britain and learning more about the British system, I think America could learn from the representative and majoritarian principles of the British government and maybe either scrap or reform some of the vetoes and unrepresentativeness of the US. This could be done by either getting rid of the filibuster or maybe getting rid of the Senate altogether. I don't know what the perfect answer is, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video.